This is when it all got interesting. When we realized we could build software in our living rooms or our bedrooms and distribute it online and make money online, simply everything changed. Every single part of the software industry, from IBM's unbundling up till the World Wide Web, up to SaaS, all was flipped on its head. What we saw was the price of software changed. It was not, instead of charging $2,000 up front, you charge $40 a month for 50 months. And you get the same amount. Instead of having annual billing cycles, you had monthly. The buyer could now be the person who uses the product. The way we ship software changed from being monolithic once-a-year shipping cycles to continuous deployed every day, every week, every month, whatever suits you. The cost of distribution, the role of user experience, what the nature of customer support was. In the old world, when you already have your $2,000 in your back pocket and your customer wants to ask you a question, you're not so motivated to actually give a shit about their problem. In the new world, when you need the other 49 months worth of revenue out of them, you're going to answer that question. Literally everything changed. The first change was just simply stuff going online. This is best typified by the shit you once had in your server room is now in the cloud. And what that meant was, like, we took the same old software and we simply put it in the cloud. And we had all these ways of pitching it, like no install needed, or there's no software, or it works from anywhere, or you can sign up online, or any of these different ways. But this was ultimately our entire framing of it was just that thing before is now up here and you can get it through a web browser. But it was ultimately the same old software. It was still ugly, it was still junky. There was no other innovation made at the time. The sort of next era, which is what, I believe 37 Signals and that sort of cohort, if you like, inspired, was that we should design software with the user in mind. Which obviously sounds pretty stupid for me to say on stage in 2016, but it was a revolutionary fucking idea at the time, right? And today we've been working on this for quite a while now. It's now become standard that when you're using software, it actually works and it's usable and it's easy to understand, because otherwise they'll just quit and go to the next software because distribution's changed. So what we have now is we have beautiful software, elegant software. The actual standard, the standard that people expect from software today is shockingly high. The table stakes, if you tell me you're building a new receipt tracking app or a new project management app or to-do list app, the standard you expect for design is ridiculously high. And there's been various things like launching the iPhone in 2007 or whatever, have all just kind of raised the public standards for what's acceptable to use. Some areas along the way, and I think project management is probably the biggest one of these, have been almost overserved by impeccable design. And I say this because it's easy to sort of think that we can out-design our way out of everything. But some areas are so over-iterated that the standard of design is so high that you actually can't break in with just a new compelling design. You need something more fundamental than that. Another change we saw, and this has been kind of the sort of SaaS 3.0 era, if you like, has been baking distribution into the product itself. So a lot of what product-first companies do is they solve other problems through their product. So it's not just, we've built a great product, but it's also a product that markets itself, and a product that distributes itself, and a product that supports itself. That's the lens through which they see things. So again, in the old world, you might just sell to me, but as time goes by, I will, inevitably, somehow through share with your friend, or through powered by this, or through giving incentives say Dropbox do for here's how you can, invite your friends for free storage or any of those things. You can very quickly tap into this network. Again, in '99, the internet was not a group of connected people. You had the email addresses of your close friends, and that was it. In 2016, we all follow each other. We're all friends with each other. Virality is phenomenal if you can achieve it. One thing I would say on this note is that when you consider SaaS and you consider your own products and what it is you're trying to tackle, it's important to realize that these innovations are not evenly distributed, right? In the same sense, the future is here, but it hasn't gotten everywhere yet. Project management, I have a pet peeve about it, but it's the most over-innovated areas. And there's a specific type of products that I'll get into in a second that tend to suffer from this. And if you look at, say, some of what, the darker corners of the software industry, if you like, payroll systems, HRIS systems, and I'm sorry to anyone who builds these, they tend to be like not as polished, to put it politely. A lot of online banking would fall into this category too. But I think genuinely what's happening here is that, the people who make software and who ultimately like create in the world, they tend to tackle the areas they know best first for a very good reason. It's where like their majority of their domain expertise lie. So as a result, if you have a consultancy of talented software people and they're getting really frustrated managing projects, what are they going to do? They're going to go and build a project management app. What they're not going to do is go and build a HRIS system. And this to me answers the core question: why are wikis so shit? I really believe it's because basically to be in a position where you need a wiki, you have to be in a large company, and thus you're already not a small team of people who are likely to go and create something. It's like, so there's a whole two if you like, segments of software. One of them is like over-iterated because everyone feels these problems. And if you think about it, like things like invoicing, to-do list tracking, project management, whatever, everyone has a go at them. It is also true to say that these are like technically simpler products than, say, web analytics or things like that, because the scaling issues aren't the same, so it's a very, very easy product to get started in. And then the other segment is things that the people who can solve these problems don't experience these problems, so the innovation just never really makes it there. But I do think there's a big opportunity for those who can be empathetic enough to the areas they don't experience to actually, over here on payroll, it's simply enough to be in the cloud. Like, that alone is fucking revolutionary for a lot of people. Which is funny, right? Like the phrase someone used me a while ago is like, it's like watching a dog on its hind legs. It's impressive that it works. It's not because it's graceful, So one thing we've learned is that like focusing on building a great product first actually solves a lot of tangential business problems. It can solve retention and engagement. It can get you traction. It can make your marketing a hell of a lot easier, and it can solve things like conversion rates, because ultimately, if you can deliver a polished product first and foremost, what you can simply do is just tell people, look at this thing, sign up for free, give it a try. That is a very, very different world to let me fly out to you with my PowerPoint slides and my team, and I'll give your CEO a presentation. So, a quality product first actually heals a lot of other business problems. And we've certainly felt this ourselves in Intercom. Here's like a quick sort of chart of Intercom's growth, if you like. And today we're like tens of thousands of customers, tens of millions of revenue. But for sure, we got there on a $0 marketing budget. Our first few thousand customers came to us without us having a sales team, without us having a marketing team. I think we had one person in marketing when we were already at 2,000 or 3,000 people. Now, for sure, we had a blog and we had a Twitter account. But like what we didn't have was a ground-up demand generation strategy that was going to help us corner the world. We just kept working on the product and on the product and on the product, and it actually does pay off. You do tap out at some point, but it's a fantastic place to get started. And like from talking to different friends in the industry who also have successful companies, one thing I've realized is there are different types of companies and there's different ways to go about this. You can be a sales-first company. So you can literally work out what deal you can do and then go back to the team and say, this is what we're going to build. And as long as you can do that reliably enough, the great thing about sales-first companies, you get feedback straight away. Because if you didn't do the deal, you didn't have to go and build the software. Fantastic, right? Marketing-first companies, you can work out what gets you the most buzz and attention and hype, and then see if you can actually deliver on it. And in fact, this is you could argue Kickstarter is what actually enables this entire trend. Literally produce some fancy concept video, see if everyone's into it, and if they're into it, go and do it, right? Or you can be tech first, which is deliver some technology innovation, and then work out if you can actually productize it in such a way that it can generate revenue. But to me, like, the key of product first companies is that they solve a real problem with a great product. Now, when I say product first, it's not about just what you do first. Most companies ultimately will have to build a product early on, but it's what you put first. It's what your priority is. It's what, when a customer says, I will sign up for your $10,000 a month mega premium platinum plan if you add these 3 things, if you're going to say yes to the cash, you're saying no to the product, right? So it really is what you prioritize first. And it's also the lens through which you see your problems. And we've seen, like, when you look at companies like Slack or like Stripe or even like Atlassian, who like IPO'd at $4 billion, we're seeing these ideas of product-first companies who don't have significant investments in marketing or in sales. Atlassian famously have no salespeople and yet are a $4 billion company. What is it that's happening? Well, I think there's two trends that are supporting this. The first is that the market for software is just ballooning. It's bigger than ever before. Literally everything you can do in this world, all businesses are becoming internet businesses. And for me, my favorite way to summarize this is just to remind people, this is what the world looked like when I was a teenager. And every activity looked very different, right? If you wanted to call somebody, you had a single-purpose device called a phone that was attached to a wall. And if you wanted to watch a movie, you'd get your friends around and you'd gather around a television. This is the world today, right? Software has literally changed this irreparably. And every single thing we do is now done through the lens of software. Right down to the photos you're taking right now, it's all software. The market demand for software is ballooning. So if this is the market, and at the top we've got like very, very large companies like governments and like Apple and Microsoft, whatever, and down here you've got tiny startups. People who are looking to buy software, this is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. To give you some ideas of why SaaS is winning, here is SaaS spend, so spend on software as a service products versus on-premise. Now, the shocking thing about this is it's slower than you think, but it's still happening. On-premise is decreasing year over year as SaaS is increasing. And I would guess, I think the Bessemer's figure is like 2020 or so is when on-premise will be effectively gone and SaaS will have won. So that market is still growing, and actually look how much growth there's still left in it. We're really actually still only in the early stage of this. Even niche markets are hitting like 10 million ARR these days. And like that 10 million ARR is a serious business. It's like a $50, $100 million business, easy, depending on growth rates. But like it's, the growth in the area of market demand for software, you could be literally selling dentistry products to dentists named Dennis, and you could still have a 10 million ARR business. That's how big it is. So one interesting way to look at this at the other side is the largest companies in the world in 2006, and again, we're seeing this sort of 10-year step change, right? Largest companies in 2006, there was one software company. In 2016, the largest companies in the world, there's 5. And depending on press releases and on investor calls, frequently you'll find the top 5 largest companies in the world are software companies. And that change is happening and will continue to happen. And if you go to the next 20, there's a lot more software companies still coming, not to mention the ones who've yet to IPO or have yet to pop, like your Ubers or your Airbnbs or whatever. Software is still blowing up, basically. Secondly, the way in which you go to market has evolved phenomenally. So again, we talked about the old world of being this idea of we have to sell to the CEO and then hopefully this product will trickle down and then someone else will sell to the CEO and we'll just go through that cycle. In the new world, you sell to me or you sell to some IC, and it's my job then to get my team on board, so that's what I do. And so I'm evangelizing the product internally, and if that works, then you can spread through an entire organization simply by targeting one good end user and giving them one good user experience. Because like people want to use good software, and when they find good software, they want to tell their friends or specifically their teammates. Because specifically in collaboration software, this is exactly what people want to do because no one wants to use shit. So the other fundamental change here is we've moved from this world of buying before you try, which then the danger here is that like the end user doesn't have the purchasing power necessarily. They can't write the check for 10 grand. They can maybe write a check for like $9 or something like that. So we've moved from this buy before you try world to a world where you can try before you buy, which enables the end-to-end user to actually experience your product, evangelize it, request it, form support, and see it adopted. And this is what you see when you look at the meteoric growth of products like Slack or like Dropbox, Intercom you could throw in there. It's definitely true that what you see is two things. You see a single person wanting to use it for a single purpose and it's spreading, or you see somebody using it as a hobby in their side project and then bringing it into their full-time their day job, right? And that does not happen when you're charging $1,000 up front, but it does happen when you have a free plan, when you have a trial period, when you have a small starting price. So what's new about now is that we can actually start these companies that can distribute products for about $0 to an ever-expanding market of users with purchasing power who will adopt and evangelize your product for you. And that simply hasn't always been the case. It's really only the case the last 10 years or so. And that has enabled a lot of things, including conferences such as this one. So what I'll quickly go through is what I consider to be the core steps in a product-first company. The very first thing you realize is that you're not product-first if the success of your product isn't core to the success of your company. And when I talk to companies, or I talk to specifically early-stage startups, I'm usually trying to work out some version of this triangle, which is, what are you actually trying to do? Like, what's your vision for the future? What's the steps you're making? And then all the way up to, like, can I join a dot between what you're doing today, which is the activities, and how it relates to what it is that you're actually seeing, or how it is you think the world will evolve because of your product. And when you're talking to a product-first company, it is very, very clear that their product is the fundamental thing. So a very non-product-first mission will be like, we want to be the #1 sales tool. Because that's nothing to do with your product. It's just you want to be #1. Or we want to exit for 100 million ARR. Or I want to be on the cover of Forbes. These are all things that are like based on ego or based on outcome or whatever, but they're not based on a fundamental change that your product will make in the world. When you're articulating these things, you can only really have one vision for the future. You don't basically get to live many lives unless you subscribe to a particular brand of religion. But you'll obviously have many activities you do. And similarly, your vision will be more abstract, whereas your activities that you're doing today will be more specific. Now, what's also interesting is, I believe you have to keep your vision fixed. You have to actually have to have a plan for what you're actually going to do in the future of the world. And if you keep changing that every day, you're going to flounder and flounder and flounder. And your vision has to be something inspirational that your entire team can get behind, whereas the stuff they do on a day-to-day basis can be much more instructional. To give you an example of some missions that popular companies have, obviously Intercom, not saying it's popular, but it's to make internet business personal. Stripe will aim to increase the GDP of the internet. Instacart want to be the best way for people anywhere in the world to shop for groceries. Uber want to make transportation as reliable as running water for anyone, for everyone, everywhere. And you sort of realize very quickly that they are focusing first and foremost on what it is that their product does. Secondly, every release of your product has to be feasible, desirable, and viable. And no two of these are ever sufficient. But basically, can it make money? Is it actually possible? And does anyone actually want it? And if you only have two of these and not the third, you're going to struggle. Either you won't make money, no one will buy it, or you won't actually be able to deliver it itself. And this, if you've probably heard me speak before, you might have heard me talk about this idea of like the cupcake approach. The simple argument here is there are two ways to create a wedding cake. And I'm getting married in 3 weeks, so I know lots about this. But if you wanted to build a wedding cake, I could start today and I could spend all this week working on a cake base, and then all next week working on the filling, and all the following week working on icing. And then on the day of my marriage, I realized chocolate, vinegar, and carrot is not a nice cake, and my oven doesn't work. And that is a shit way to learn things about how you're doing something. A better way to learn would be, today I'm going to try and build a cupcake. And at that point, I'll work out if the oven works, and I'll work out that chocolate and carrot is not a nice flavor. And if I get that right, and when I get that right, I'll then go up to a cake, and then I'll go to a wedding cake. The key point is it's desirable, feasible, and viable at every step. And if you can do that, you're protecting yourself against a lot. But most importantly, you will lose your reputation as being a good product company if you ship something that isn't like this. Because if people sign up and it's like a building site where like every other link doesn't work, you're going to destroy your reputation as being like product focused. It's going to be quite clearly you're the company that lies about shit to get people to sign up. You're marketing focused, you're something else focused. You're not thinking about product. The key thing to being a good product company is to be ruthless about focusing your product work. So I've often said that basically every feature in your product is used by some people or all people sometimes or all the time. And if you take, say, a typical project management app, these are some example features that you might want to think about. But the biggest warning I frequently give people is this idea here, which is just that there are some features that need to be phenomenal. And if you're wasting your time in the lower left, you're working on shit that no one sees, or they really doesn't matter that often. If you're working in the top left, you're working on stuff that's going to be close to consulting ware. And consulting ware being you're building things for that one customer who uses it that one time. Right? Product-first companies don't do this. The other thing they do is they focus on what we consider to be like high-impact work. So all the work you do in your product can be categorized as being high impact or low impact, and high effort or low effort. In the top right, you have like what should be the core of your strategy. In the top left, there's not a lot of work there, the stuff that's high impact, low effort, but every now and then you can throw out a little bit of delightful feature or whatever. In the bottom right, most people are pretty good at staying away from this shit. Like that is like, let's rewrite our entire product for no reason again. But the danger here is actually the lower left. The danger is people get sucked into doing stuff that's low effort, low impact. And they justify it by saying it was easy to do or it was no effort, and they justify its lack of impact for the exact same reason. And what you do there is you're basically chasing stuff, getting nowhere, but you're fooling yourself into thinking you're hustling and getting shit done. This is why the PM role is so crucial in startups. Another key point is just charge for the value you create. So not every good product creates a good business. And to give you some very simple examples, don't solve a rare problem that's actually not that big a deal. A rare problem being something I don't experience that often, like let's say I need something to expand a tweet for me when I want to write a multi-tweet post. It's something I don't really care about, I don't need to do it that often. If you try and build a business around that, you'll never be able to capture any value. Similarly, don't build a complex, cheap product, because your onboarding is going to be so expensive and you will not be able to recoup that value. Second last is follow some meaningful metrics. I'm sick of seeing companies throw charts like this at us and say, hey, would you consider partnering with us or investing in me or whatever? That's phenomenal ARR growth, but it means nothing without churn. For all you know, all that revenue could be falling out the following day. And even though that's actual ARR growth, if most of that churns in every given month, you will die eventually. Your growth will slow and all of your revenue will disappear eventually. Product-first companies have to obsess about churn because your bet is that people love your product. If they're churning out of it, your bet isn't true. You need that feedback. So Mamoon Hamid, who invested in our Series A, he produces this thing called the quick ratio, which is just add up your new MRR and your expansion. So your new customers and how much money your current customers expanded by, and divide it by your cancelled customers and your contracted money. That answers you a very simple question. Can I reliably grow revenue? It's sort of the analogy of the marketing version, which is called the magic number, which is basically, for every dollar I spend, how can I see it back within the same year? And lastly, practice humble confidence, especially at the early stages. There will be shit months and there will be hard months, and there'll be times when you really think you don't have a clue what you're doing. This is Intercom's revenue growth, and if you look in the say 2012 to 2013, some of those months weren't phenomenal. We weren't like lighting up any scoreboards. There's going to be a lot of periods where you really feel like it's not all roses and like whatever else goes with roses, chocolates, I guess. I was going to say cocaine, but that's not a different thing. There's going to be bad months. But like the one thing that like I've constantly been reassured by talking to other founders, and I found myself constantly reassuring other founders, is that you're doing better than you think. So have confidence, but you have so much left to learn, so have humility. As long as you can practice confidence and humility side by side, you'll do okay. Most importantly, have confidence in what it is you're trying to do, but just be open that there's possibly better ways to get there frequently. So that's the summary of what I think the core of product-first companies are about and why they're going to be huge in this sort of generation or this cohort that we're all part of. I've been Traynor from Intercom. I'll be posting the slides on our blog. I hope this has been good. Thank you.